dancing or the?
Oh, Stardate 61284.222. Welcome to Star Trek Discovery Pod, a kind of smart, kind of funny podcast covering new and classic Trek. I'm your potentially genetically modified captain, Mariah Gossett. With me on the V screen, we have
Clyde Haynes. I'm waiting for our origin story episode, the podcast where we just tell our origin stories. That's what I'm waiting on.
All right.
And your genetically modified mistake, Paul Fatachi.
You're never a mistake in my eyes, Paul.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Tonight we are reviewing and chatting about Star Trek Prodigy episodes. What episode numbers are we covering tonight? 15 and 16. We haven't had to go this high in numbers in so long. It's never usually past like 12 or 13.
Like we had to go back into the code and just redo the dates, just like Y2K.
Indeed, my computer does not know how to compute. But before we dig into these two episodes, Paul, how can people
exactly
do things with us? I fully lost the transition.
Hey, if you like what we're doing, consider subscribing to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. And all the links are at StarTrekPod.co. And if you love our content, which I know you do, consider Patreoning us. Is that a word? Is that a noun?
Yeah.
Is a verb?
Become a patron.
A patron. And just for $2 per episode. Patron us. Patron us. Harry Potter reference, everyone. At patreon.com/StarTrekPod.
Clyde, how can people engage with us in the live stream this evening?
Have happy thoughts. Seriously, if you want to engage with us, you want to send us your comments, you've got questions, then all you have to do, if you're watching us live, then type capital P, capital O, capital D, capital pod in the chat, and we'll check out what your thoughts are. And in a moment, we're going to do a thing where you know what it is. And if you want to play along and give us your take, just type capital H, capital F, capital HF in the chat, and we'll take a look at yours. After we show you ours.
All right.
That sounds not as...
After we tell you ours?
Tell you ours.
It's an audio experience.
We will tell you ours.
There was a glitch. It just came off.
Yours.
That's right.
Yes.
It didn't sound much better.
Mine if you tell me yours. Yes.
All right. We are definitely members of Starflight over Starfleet this evening, but that's okay. All right. Tonight we are talking about Masquerade, which was directed by Soong Shin, written by Nikhil S. Jaiharam. I gotta start writing pronunciations for myself. I really hate that I don't do that. And we will also dig into Preludes, which was directed by Stephen Chang and Soong Shin. And it's a long list, but it's credited with every writer on the show for episode 16, which they've done before, but it has been a minute. So it is a long list, but we appreciate y'all. Julie Benson, Shauna Benson, Kevin and Dan Hageman, Nikhil Jaharam, Dana. Anyway, you should look up everybody. It is a long list. There's
there we go.
8 of them.
It's one of those episodes, everyone.
It's one of those episodes. But we got some cool backstories. We're going to dig into that in just a little bit. But I appreciate all of the writers on here. I'm excited to see everyone's work. Aaron J. Watke, Lisa Schultz-Boyd, Chad Quadrant, and Deandra Peddleton Thompson. All right, I mentioned everybody. That is all of them. Anyway, I think it is time for us to discuss episode 15. But first we gotta do a little thing. We gotta do some it's time for some hot breaks. I gotta make some more videos for us.
I think that one is probably my favorite. The superimposed Riker on Chris Evans.
Yeah,
like less buff Chris Evans.
Just slightly less though.
Can we keep the voice though? Because it's like having a little bit of Grant with us every episode.
Every episode he stays with us. What did y'all think of Masquerade? Clyde, let's start with you.
You have to figure that I loved it, because if you think about the last time we were on the podcast, I was, young and freshly faced, and you're trying to figure out what happened. I just kind of hit that button in the back of my neck.
Neutral zone.
and I souped up my genetically enhanced, and then boom, much like Dow, like facial hair just started growing at a rapid rate. But no goo. Don't worry. There's no goo. No, I thought this was interesting. We get a bit of a chase scene. We get to see Super Murph just doing all kind of crazy stuff. It was if you were looking for an action adventure Prodigy episode, this was going to be it, with a little bit of some backstory on Dahl, and this idea of kind of him being like a hodgepodge of stuff, and having to come to terms with who he is and a little bit of his origin story. I thought it was interesting. That was a good episode, and plus we had the incredible reveal at the end that just was like, okay, worth watching, just to say, okay, what happens next. I'm excited to see the next episode, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Paul, what about you?
Well, I'm a sucker for a upgrade episode. One of my favorites was in Next Gen was the nth degree, where Barkley becomes like super smart.
Super Barkley, yeah.
Yeah, and so seeing Super Dow is totally up my alley. I think the resolution from the Starfleet, the Dauntless Romulan thing seemed a little like I kind of want to dive into that more, as opposed to just a stalemate, and then here's Janeway, and then now she's just sitting again. But aside from that, I thought it was great. The reveal at the end where you find out that Janeway's a ghost. Just kidding.
That's good. I was like, wait, what? What did I miss?
No, I thought that was great. I think I had something that was the admiral that Jane was talking to. Was that Jericho?
Yes.
Because it goes man, no one plays an asshole like Jericho.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is so good. I'm so glad they used him. Completely reasonable, but why you gotta be you? I think that was great. So there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah.
He will always be. And this is, again, I don't know what's with me in these old references, but he will always be
classic references.
The classic, thank you. The guy from RoboCop with
that's right.
OCP, the head of OCP. He'll always it's I met him as a jerk, and over the next 40 years, he's not disappointed.
He can play it well.
Very well.
Yeah, I agree with y'all. I thought this one, in kind of watching both of these episodes today, I feel like they balanced each other out well, because I felt like the plot was a little weak in Masquerade, but we obviously got a ton of exposition, and I'll talk about the other episode a little bit later. But I felt like we definitely got lots and lots of action in this ep. I thought the Romulan
Death Squad
was it was done well for a kids show, right? I was like, how are y'all going to handle this kind of level of violence that can ensue when you have Romulan death squads involved? And then,
but it's really consistent with the first episode of Picard, with when they had, so I think I like how it's of the same universe.
Yeah. And I love when we get a planet elevator shaft jump scene. I feel like it has now become just a staple of every series. We have to have one. So I really enjoyed that, and I thought it was fun to finally get Dahl's backstory, and to kind of hear how he is processing all of that. And I think we get the bigger processing in episode 16 as well, hearing more about everybody.
I have a question about that. How do you feel do you feel like they built up the mystery of Dow's origins, and then all of a sudden here it is, you know, or
I
do you
feel
feel
like
like
it's still a bit of a mystery. I
Yeah.
do. I'm kind of. I want them to introduce to me at this point a new character beyond Soong who's dealing with like DNA alteration, like these big, not so great experiments, right? Like I know they said it was a protege of his, but I was just like, we use this character so much. It's like, how long in history is this name gonna just like continue to haunt this universe? Like I'm ready for a new big bad, and that's in that
it's a
area.
circle of violence, like trauma begets trauma. I mean,
Yes.
it's a kids show, and it's so deep.
Well, I think it's to answer your question, Paul, and to comment on what you just said, Mariah. I think we haven't really heard Dow's backstory yet.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Right? Like we keep
Right.
getting snippets, but I think there's more coming. And this is a kid show. So my expectation is that Dahl has a backstory that is amazing, right? Amazingly positive. Because right now he's largely not, it's not that positive. So I have to think that the reveal is going to be it's an incredibly positive, Data-esque origin story. Yeah, I see that coming.
Cool.
It'll be interesting to see if he ever gets to interact with like a Data or a Data-like character.
Yeah, but I agree. It's interesting because now we've got this Soong character on two different reincarnations of Star Trek. When we think about Discovery and Lower Decks, not Lower Decks, Prodigy, but I'm wondering if we're going to see them on Lower Decks and Picard, and just do the whole, and Strange New World. We'll do all five, and it'll just be kind of a gag amongst writers, right?
It's like the Star Trek hat trick,
Yes,
like
it'll be a trivia. Yeah, it'll be a trivia question like, what character was influential when all 5 new series of Star Trek? That's what it's going to be.
Yeah. Would y'all, so I thought it was fun how there was like an ad for this doctor as they're going down the elevator. It reminds me now when you go up to a gas station and even just pumping your gas, they play ads for you, which I find very annoying. I can't even imagine how long you had to watch ads on a giant space elevator, how long that ride would take for something like that. But I thought it was a clever way to introduce the character of Dr. Jago. Would you let the doctor alter your DNA? If so, what traits would you want enhanced and what would you want unenhanced?
Clyde.
There are so many ways I could go with that. Many are appropriate, many are not. But
Star Trek Pod After Dark, everyone.
No, what I'm talking about is what I meant was like, you can't see me if you're listening to this, but I have no hair on my head. So the first thought is like, would I like have it altered so I have a nice, well coiffed afro? No, I think first of all, the answer to your first question, let's say the real answer is no. Much like most of the stuff that is advertised to me on a gas station TV monitor, I am not buying. Especially anything in the area of surgery, healthcare, or DNA replacement. I'm not getting it from a TV monitor and a space elevator.
You don't trust the doctors with billboards?
Not even a little bit. So, but let's, for the sake of the discussion, let's say the answer to that question was sure, why not? What would I enhance? I would definitely look to like read. I'd want to read faster, like just be able to be quicker in terms of processing information, holding on to information. Like basically, I'd want Data's superpower of being able to like read everything really fast and retain all of that information. That's probably where I'd go.
What about you, Paul?
Interesting. I mean, like, I have no problem with gas station doctors. Because, like, if they're advertised on the space elevator, you gotta assume that, they paid a premium for that. And so they're probably very successful, so they're, because you want to experience that. Like, I think, like, like in my youth, I would probably have gone with like, give me the Bashir. Like, just a little mental upgrade, a little tactile, a little more Olympic style, like what you call it, hand-eye coordination. But as I've grown older, I would like the Bashir plus like the ability to have a nice singing voice. I've come to realize that, like, oh, I sound awful. and it's not even that I'm out of tune, although I oftentimes am. But it's I'm out of tune, and my singing voice is just grating, and I'm like, that's no good. So and immortality,
Oh, really? Immortality?
like I'd be okay just like watching all the people I love die. It's okay. It's like I'm very Buddhist about that. Like it's gonna happen, so I'll find new people to love, and then they'll die. And, I'll be like a vampire without having to drink blood.
That's called an immortal from the Highlander series.
Hey, there you go. Like there can only be Paul.
Be one.
But I'm one to take big swings with my genetic makeup, apparently.
I was like, I think mine would be like, I'd love to not have to wear glasses.
That's right. Yeah, no.
I'd love to be able to digest dairy.
Those are some big ass there.
I was as Paul was talking, I was thinking, you know what I missed out on? The ability to eat as much food as often as I want without feeling full or gaining weight. That would be a superpower in and of itself.
Yeah, mine would just be like, I could eat cheese and not want to cry. That would be great.
Mine would be just the ability to cry, just to feel emotions.
Okay. Well, if anyone in the chat has thoughts of what they would want to do, let us know. But let's see what some of the hot franks are from the folks in the live stream. Let's check it out from Kuhn. We have Jellicoe is vindicated. Love the doll augment scenes, but how did they slip Q DNA in there? I mean, it's not like the Q we know is really that I don't know. I feel like he's pretty freewheeling.
I was going to say,
easy to get something from him.
He was going to knock up Janeway.
He definitely does not hold on to his DNA with any discrimination.
No, he probably just thought it would be a fun experiment. Was like, sure, have some. I feel like that's a vibe. Chippy says, for Masquerade, love this ep. Brett was amazing. Who voices Doll? I wonder if Doll will ever seek out a data hologram to help himself with being so unique, as overused as Soong is to make sense. There are proteges. Yes, I hope we get to learn more about the proteges and what that looks like. Let's see if any other hot franks. Chippy agrees with me. Hate the TV at the gas pumps. PW Gregory on the same page as I. Better eyesight would be nice and simple. Chippy likes the Bashir. I would like to not have a bad back. Yeah, I also feel that.
That's a good one. That's a good
solid choice.
Like there's a sea wasp, that is theoretically the only immortal being on on the planet. Like basically because it can go younger.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you just look at immortal animals. You could look
Does
at
it live underwater?
I believe so.
I'm convinced that aliens just come from underwater.
Yeah.
They don't come from space.
And so, what if you could, reverse your aging at will?
Ooh.
Yeah. And for $49.95, you could add.
I mean, the things I would tell 20-year-old Clyde, man, tell you what.
Stretch. I would just be like, stretch every day. Because now I'm playing catch up. But
oh boy, tell me, man.
So in catching up with our crew here, they're in the neutral zone. They're working on repairs. They need to go down to Noble Isle to get a few things. And that's where Doll gets to learn a little bit more about his DNA makeup. And then we also have the start of our conflict with the Romulans, who realize they need the captain in order to gain access to the ship. And Okana quickly makes an escape in this episode. It's like I almost had to rewind it and watch it back because it's such a like not big, it didn't feel like a big betrayal. It was just like, I'm out. Yeah. Like peace be with you and also with you. I'm out.
I will say that I am not a big fan of how they handle Okana in this episode because like, they
really built him up and then it was like
just
such
like
a
never mind.
letdown. Yeah.
And Okana wasn't a jerk like in Next Gen. Like he's kind of a jerk now.
Here's what it felt like to me, right? It feels like if you ever remember, if you've done a creative writing assignment, right? Or a series where you write part of a story, then you hand it over to someone else, and then they write part of a story, and then someone else gets it. Like you have these ideas of what's going to happen, and then someone else picks it up and like, well, I got different ideas. It felt like with Okana, you had a writing team that was like, oh, we're going to build this up. This is going to be great. And then you had another team that came in and said, nah, not interested, going in a different direction. And that's what it felt like. It was like, oh, you think I'm the captain? Nope. And then you just run him off stage. Like,
I'm wondering if he'll come back in some way towards the end of the series, and that'll make this feel a little bit more cohesive from what you're saying, Clyde. Because at this point, I'm just like, well, what was even the point really of making this particular character Okana, right? Like this could have been any person that they met on a planet that smuggled them off.
Really, the only thing he had was name recognition, barely. Only for us diehards, right?
And this is his third series that he's popped up in, right?
But is it? What's Next Gen? Which is the
Lower Decks? He was the DJ.
Oh, that's right. Well, there you go.
Well, it felt like they were giving him as this light guide piece, right? Like the whole thing about the Janeway hologram is she's a guide, a mentor to them while on the ship.
Right.
But when they're on an away mission, they're on their own. Well, in the last few episodes, we've seen Okana kind of act as a little bit of a guide while they've been running around from people. And it was like, okay, well, this will be kind of like the chaperone when they're on away missions. And then boom, somebody goes, yeah, I don't love that. And I actually kind of thought it was okay because, it was a very light touch, I thought, by the way he showed up for them. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next and if he comes back.
We also in this episode get the reveal that Murph is again kind of a bit of a secret weapon. Last podcast we kind of talked a bit about how we weren't as in love with the metamorphosis of Murph, and we were kind of like, why did we take something very cute, cuddly, squishy, and make him look like the Flubber character? But we now see that there are some advantages, and I feel like it's probably more helpful for this character to be able to do things than just burp and slug around, for sure. But it was fun when he did just like burp and slug around. Very cute. But this was pretty badass. I do like that they have to keep him in like a little ball to keep him from destroying things, but now he's the security officer, which does feel very much like a kid thing to do.
Like who voices Murph?
Oh, what's his name?
Is it D. Baker or something like that?
He's like a pretty famous voice actor.
And I guess my question is like, it must be
like Bradley Baker.
Like it must be a kind of amazing to just get paid to just squeak.
I mean, he voices like a lot of ancillary characters throughout the series too. Okay. So he'll do like a couple of voices per episode. So I don't think it's just making like
it's not Vin Diesel.
Fart noises,
I'm Groot, right?
I'm Groot. I mean, I think there was a line in here. It's like he's indestructible, but he still feels, or something like that. It's like that's a great line. I'm happier with where we are with Murph today, and they needed muscle.
Yeah.
Right. And
because Rock is too sensitive, I think, to be our muscle.
But I think that's an interesting kind of juxtaposition, right? So your muscle is the squishy character, and your heart is the rock hard, menacing, not to jump into the next episode, but monster-esque character. That is, that's funny, right?
Yeah. I enjoy the juxtaposition between those two characters for sure. Aboard Janeway's non-holographic Janeway's ship, we have them kind of keeping track of what's going on with the Romulans, a potential they almost shoot and explode the protostar, but they program the missiles to go the other way at the last minute when they realize the Romulans don't have the ship. And it feels like Admiral Janeway is at least starting to understand that there's something going on, that these kids are trying to keep the ship away. Right. And she's starting to put some of these pieces together. And towards the end, we get the big reveal that Essentia is actually a Vonnegut, like the Diviner, which I thought was a very surprising twist. I definitely did not see that coming until this episode.
No, I did not see that coming, like, at all. I was thinking, because I mean, I thought that was a great kind of head fake, right?
Mhm.
Like, it was one of those things where I'm looking at the time like, man, she's just really leaning to the Diviner. Like, she has no idea how bad he is. And then boom, it's like, oh, like, I did not see that coming.
And did you see that she went to the elevator doctor?
Yeah, because she had the button on the back of her
Yeah,
head.
see, it worked
I
totally
did see
fine.
that.
Well, I was like, that's very impressive that it was able to get past like all of the Starfleet,
Sure,
sensors and stuff.
the doctor does good work.
Apparently she does.
I don't think the doctor does good work. And if I had to guess, what is it we call it? Like theory time?
Clyde theory
Um,
time.
Yeah, I think what we're gonna find is that how they defeat her is the malfunctioning button on the neck.
Okay.
That could have some potential.
And if Clyde is wrong, everyone, he will pay anyone who challenges him $1 each.
Negative.
So make sure you're subscribing to our Patreon.
one strip of gold-plated latinum, everyone.
There you go, latinum.
For everyone.
Like, just for some ship talk, like we just got to see the bridge of the Dauntless, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same bridge as the slipstream ship in the Delta Quadrant. So like, did they just steal the plane? Because the Dauntless has a quantum slipstream.
Well, it's also it's also a slipstream ship. Yeah.
So it doesn't look like a Starfleet bridge. It looks like I forgot what the name of the race bridge was, but like anyway, I love the detail. I was going like, but like, when have you changed it? I don't know. Who knows? Like obviously,
it ain't broke, don't fix it. I guess.
Yes, that is the motto of Starfleet.
Also, yes. but also, I look at this and go, from a demographic standpoint, the people who are likely using this have never seen the actual slipstream ship. So
yeah,
why not use it? They won't know.
Yeah.
Little do they know, a bunch of older Star Trek fans would be
sitting here
time watching and then examining each and every episode.
Yeah, no. Oh well.
Do y'all have anything else you want to talk about for Masquerade before we dig into Preludes?
I guess the Masquerade is the reveal at the end. I was going like, why is it called Masquerade? But now that I'm getting it, like maybe I also get a brain upgrade more than the Bashir, just because apparently
just a little wind up.
That's right. Get the obvious, whatever. Anyway,
these dreadnoughts are pretty scary.
The dreadnoughts are pretty scary.
They feel like something straight out of Star Wars, Attack of the Clones. But
are we getting into your hot freak here? Should we?
No, I'm just saying in general. Like,
in general. Oh yeah, when he morphs out of the table.
Yes, when like she walked in and was like dreadnought. I was like, what the?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it is time we transition to episode 16, Preludes, with another rendition of
Hot Freaks! Hot Freaks!
Some more Hot Franks. Paul, we'll start with you. What did you think of Preludes?
Well, Preludes is what's called basically kind of like a bottle episode, right? They're just hanging out and then they're just talking.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because like when you do that for a TV show, generally, it's because like we're out of money and we need to do something so that here's an episode that's going to cost very little. But when you're doing animation, like you still have to draw it, or you still have to like create.
Yeah.
So it's a remnant of like a production thing that like So I thought that was interesting from a meta perspective. As far as an episode, I thought it was fine. I don't think I loved anything really. I think like I like my biggest thought is like, man, Kazon suck.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I'm trying to think of like what if they were an animal in the animal kingdom, what would they be? Like, what's something that's mildly menacing and just sucks?
Like a hyena.
That's what I came up with. I went to Lion King and I go, the hyenas, like they just suck. Although their bite is very stronger than a lion, like because they eat bone. But and this is
so many animal facts tonight, Paul. Have you been watching a bunch of documentaries?
Been watching the Animal Planet.
We got sea wasps.
That's
we
right.
got the bite of a hyena.
That's right. But yeah, I was just thinking of the Kazons, and especially when they captured Zero and they had the visor on, I go like, how'd they know to do that? But like it's all these. But the touch is great because I go like, yeah. Anyway. I just walked away with like this isn't the intent of the episode, but my takeaway was Kazons always suck.
It was quite the pattern. They really set it up that way. Yeah. Clyde, what about you?
I've often said on this podcast that I hate like flashback episodes. Like they're just a waste to me. It's like, look, I've already watched these episodes. Why are you giving me clips of them again? Right. But what I do appreciate, the two things that I do love, and I've said this a few times, I've said the first one, Tim, is I love a good team up. I'm always here for a team up. And I'm actually always here for a good origin story. And I thought that we got some nice origin backstory because we've been kind of moving along for a long time, not really knowing where these kids have come from. And so now, like, we've seen how they ended up in a way that says, okay, this is Rock Talk. And I was like, wow, Rock Talk's backstory fitting, makes sense. Zero's backstory was kind of interesting, right? Because you see this transformation of her being very, very free to now being in this suit. You got to even see Jangum Pog's backstory, where I was kind of like, all right, I didn't kind of see that coming. And then what was even more interesting is you got to see kind of the diviner's backstory. And was like, oh, okay. So we've been hearing like so mad at the Federation. We're so mad at the Federation. They're so awful. And we're like, why? And so now we see their backstory. So it feels like it filled in some pieces. But Paul, to your point, yeah, they largely just sat around the campfire telling stories and trying to fix the ship.
Yeah, I agree with both of y'all. It was a lot of information to get dumped in one episode. Like I feel like there's
23-minute episode of what it is.
That's kind of why I was like, these felt like a good pairing, but it was like moments where I was like, oh, I wish we had gotten like some of this in the other episode because that one felt so light on like character development versus like this episode was nothing but character backstory across the board, especially I think the story of the diviner and like the legacy there was like so much to kind of like take in right at the top of the episode, and the story of Solemn and their planet. But in hearing that, and that's kind of generally my hot freak. But I overall I enjoyed the episode. Specifically, I enjoyed the variation of animation style and approach, which I found really interesting. And I felt like you could really see that there were different writers handling everyone's story, which I enjoyed seeing how everyone approaches the character development in different ways. And some of that was reflected in the animation, specifically around Solemn, which I thought was interesting. They used very like kind of Soviet Cold War era, like poster art inspo. I felt like there were some really interesting pieces there, especially if you go back and look at like when they're looking at the ship and it's all the still frame stuff before they kind of move into, it felt very poster prints, which I thought was a cool way to handle the backstory there. But in hearing their story, which was essentially like the Federation showed up, some of us felt like we should join, some of us felt like we shouldn't join. So then we dived into Civil War. It's like that huge blame on Starfleet to me feels like a stretch.
I was thinking the same thing. Like it was a little thin. Like you just
I not to defend the Diviner and the Vindicator, but like there's probably more to it than that. Like
right?
this is just their
this is like their propaganda story that they tell themselves, right?
Exactly.
But which is what I'm assuming is why they're using this kind of like propaganda poster. I was like, oh, this is what they've been told is the reason for all of this, right? But it is something I wish we had gotten a little bit of more from the Diviner prior to now, because then I think I would feel like this was juice. I don't know, like it was so many details to get at once that I was like, okay, here's everything laid out. This is a lot. Like
like on occasion I'll mention Robotech, and then Clyde will smile. Robotech. But but there like in the very classic like episodic storytelling, like usually one person gets the backstory, right? Like in an episode, and that way you can focus on that person and that emotional beat. Right. Whereas right now, like in some ways, people are emotionally stepping on each other because it's just so much so much at once. Like but it's a kids show, so I see why they did it. But like I can't imagine this is a kid's favorite episode of in some ways. You slowed down so much to get the exposition.
It's interesting. I think it depends. Because I think if you were a Rock Talk like fan, this was a great vignette for Rock, right? Like you've wanted to see Rock in this kind of both as this stalwart kind of incredible force, but also with a tender heart, and you got it all, right? So
but imagine like going on a mission and all of a sudden Rock meets the person who sold her away, and then she gives the backstory. Then they have to deal with that person. Imagine that story coming out that way. That would take a whole 23 minutes, as opposed to just this little vignette. Because like truthfully, like you could theoretically go without seeing this episode, and you haven't missed anything, because like everyone's backstory is sort of irrelevant to where they are now. Right.
I'd say except for the story of Solomon. Like, yeah.
Sure. So in some ways, like I feel like this episode shifted into neutral a little bit. And so it maybe, that's literally the purpose of a campfire scene or an episode. So I'm not dropping any insights here.
Well, yeah, I think to jump on what y'all are talking about specifically, I really enjoyed Rock's backstory and seeing how she, was kind of like, I lived kind of like a not great life, and I am very interested how Rock even got into
there.
that position. Yeah. Because it already was like, oh no, you went from like being like in a bad situation to an even worse situation. Like it was like you made the most out of a bad situation, and then you went into something even worse.
I do love that it just parallels Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah. And then I wrote WWE was my note. It was just Rock WWE. And then we have Zero, who tells the story of like kind of this magical exploration time, and then
it's like Dark E.T.
Dark E.T. Yeah,
that's right. Like E.T. comes around, and all of a sudden, like the feds get them and gets E.T. instead of like Elliot.
Yeah. And then for Jenkum, I wrote The Ship of Orphans. He wakes up. It's kind of like that bad Chris Pratt movie, but with a better ending.
Passengers.
Yeah.
There was literally a comment in here. Karen said,
Passenger.
Head passenger vibes. Yeah.
No, like in some ways, Jankum has become my favorite character. Not necessarily to watch, but like he is so simplistic in
Mhm.
how he sees the world, and it's pretty much like if you could get past the fact that he can be a jerk and rough, he has like kind of like a really good heart that you don't he doesn't really like you give him a task, he doesn't, although he bitches about it, he doesn't really, he just does it,
Yeah.
and then like oh well, I have to leave, I have to sacrifice myself in order to save everyone else, I guess I'm doing that.
So. Well, and this is the second time we've seen him do it, right? Like he was willing to do that when they were on the Starflight planet and was like, I'm going to jump into this shuttle and try to fix this, right?
Yeah.
So,
so he's great.
Yeah.
Like, he might not have all the polish that everyone else has, but like, at his core, like he's the person you want in your corner.
Well, it's fascinating because normally when people talk about themselves in the third person more than once, right? I give you one. After that, I'm like, okay. But to your point, he's rough around the edges, but has this kind of heart of gold that he's not even aware of, really.
Yeah. Like
Michael points out, like the annoying droid is essentially why Jankum's always referring to himself in the third person, which was a funny tick that he just developed. And then I also thought this was a funny moment, which was we get the origin of percussive maintenance.
Right.
And I do like that the only one that was like a major hesitation was like the toilet was backing up, and I'm just like, no one is on this
Who's
ship.
using it?
It's been clogged for a while. It's been clogged for a while.
What happened
And now
to this
it's
toilet?
ossified, so
the annoying droid was probably one of my favorite like elements of this episode because it was funny, right? It had a certain Wally vibe to it, where it was just kind of like you've got this just coming around. Like I thought it was funny. Like that interaction between the droid and Jacob was just kind of like, I'm entertained, right?
It was a good back and forth. It was probably one of my favorite pieces of the whole episode. I also like that we get Gwen kind of seeing her role in all of this too.
Oh yeah.
Which I thought was a nice moment for her character, and I think we've seen a lot of growth from her, because I think if this was a few episodes ago, she would have become very like depressive and like hypercritical, but I think she recognizes where her flaws were, but has like grown into like a much better person at this point.
Yeah. And I've got to agree with Choopy. There was a line in this that was like, wow. And it was like, what happened to your progeny? And there was this hesitation, and it was, she met a boy. I was like, that's an interesting take.
Yeah.
Like, the diviner seems, at least up until a moment past this is the calmest, most rational that we've seen the diviner, because typically it's just this fire and this rage and hate. And I think we've all looked at him as faking, but now that I look back and go, no, we've gotten a different side, a much calmer, a much more rational, and it has me listening to him. And I thought that was maybe the most tender moment that we've seen of him. And then it all went away, but it was a moment.
I mean, like it's you never know about those child labor exploiters. Like sometimes they can surprise you with like with their touch. But then the next thing you know, they go back to having all those children. Let's make sure none of them can speak to each other, and that you're just slave labor. And if you don't work, I make you crazy by looking at this person's face. Like, I mean, yeah, I have a lot of sympathy for him.
I feel like this bit. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. Good night, everybody.
I did like it towards the end. We get to see Hollow. Janeway mentions the story about Molly, her dog, which I thought was like a cute little nod for those of us who will remember. But I'm sure kids, it's just like, ooh, she's going to tell us about a dog. But I thought that was a nice little nod to the adults who they all know are watching this show. And then we have Admiral Janeway walking into the quarters to see that the Diviner and the Vindicator in cahoots.
Well, you know, Mariah, the thing I loved about that was right before that, and the fact that Janeway's, we get these backstories in this, like, who are these kids?
Mhm.
And she comes to the realization of
These are just kids.
These are just kids who've been horribly treated,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just trying to make it. So she's no longer chasing them, trying to get them and thinking of them as bad people, but she now is understanding who they are. And I was that was a relief, because I didn't want that to go on episode after episode after episode. I was actually like, okay, great. So they're not the villains in her eyes. They're kids who need to be rescued.
Yeah. For me, like, you know, my takeaway of that was like, so they go to, like, is it the ensign's room or?
Yeah, it's the ensign's. Well, yeah, the ensign's quarters.
Yeah. And Janeway just walks in without knocking.
That's true.
I go, serves her right. Karate chop. Kirk shot to the back of the.
It's her ship. She can do what she wants.
I guess, but, like, you know, like, it's that's
also for an ensign that doesn't have to sleep in the big bunky quarters.
Yeah, I mean, just walk on in. I mean, that just seemed like, I don't know.
Here's my thing. Like, have we not read enough captain's logs to know when you're going to confront somebody, you should probably bring security. Like,
well, I don't know if she knew that it was going to be that kind of a situation. I think she assumed she was bringing someone because her ensign that she trusts is in there.
No, bring somebody with a phaser. Like, bring somebody who's trained.
Yeah.
To phaser people.
This is some open carry stuff you're laying down there.
No, listen, I'm not. Believe me, I'm not.
It's your own ship. You go in packing. This is your own
blazing.
I'm saying, look, here's what you know. You know that you have a stranger on your ship that you're starting to suspect is not who you thought they were. And you've got questions. And when you ask, where are they? They are with your ensign. You have no idea what's going on. For all you know, maybe they've got your ensign hostage. I'm just saying, you got a security team, right? Maybe you got some Makos. I don't know, but you got some security people
Makos.
on. Thank you. You like that reference?
You went
yes,
to Enterprise.
I dug. Yes, for those of you who know the pod, I used an Enterprise reference. Yes, it did. But no, bring some security just to, for backup. Maybe you don't need them, maybe, but that's their job. This is what they're supposed to do, is to come with you when you confront sketchy characters. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
No, it's a freak. It's a hot freak. All right.
It is a hot freak. I feel like it would be remiss if we didn't mention, we finally get to see Chakotay and what's going on with Chakotay and his crew, whose first officer is also Aurelian, which I am loving all of the Aurelians that we get in the animated series now. But we see that he is stuck on Solemn in the future.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So James is going to wait a long time.
Yeah. It's a long road, you might say.
Game from here to there.
Yeah.
Boom, Clyde. Welcome you back.
Well, at least Mike's not singing. So.
Oh, we talked about me singing, right? Because
but what did you think of kind of that situation on Solemn, and do you think we're going to get Chakotay back, essentially? Is that possible?
I hope not.
Yeah.
I understand why we're saying that, but
it's more for the actor than the character.
Yes. What I look at is, this is a kids show, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you can't introduce a character that they're searching for, and then that character is dead. Like, you're not going to do that.
Dead in the future.
I'm just saying, you're not going to do that.
Just like Burnham.
Again, kids show, right? Because if my kids were watching this and you kill off a character, and now my 5-year-old is asking me, what happened to Chakotay, Dad?
Do your kids ask what happened to the Romulans that get tossed off the elevator?
Nice.
No.
No, this is roast Clyde night. Everyone, welcome. I hope you bought your tickets.
Here's the thing about the Romulans, and I thought about this earlier, and this is the slight difference. We never really see them, right? They never take off that motorcycle helmet. Right. So as far as we're concerned, they're inanimate objects. And I think that's how you can get away with it. Right. You can toss them off a space bridge when they are essentially robots. But the minute you give them a face and a name and a voice, you can't do it.
That's true. That's like, did y'all watch Power Rangers way back in the day? Do you remember the like muddy putty people?
I will not confirm nor deny that I watched the Power Ranger.
What's embarrassing about watching Power Rangers?
No,
it was a classic. Rita Repulsa, incredible villain.
Oh yeah, like I love all the the Asian Power Ranger was what color was she again? No. There's so many things. I mean, hey, whatever. Don't worry about it. Choo-choo, everyone, pause. Coming in hot. Phasers in hot.
No, I get it. It's all problematic. Yeah. I have no qualms admitting that the Power Rangers are problematic, but to the point was watching that show as a kid, I'd watch them beat the crap out of these inanimate, characters.
Absolutely.
I mean, look, I'll take it even further back and go pre-Power Ranger and go Voltron.
Yeah,
right?
Voltron's
It's the same thing. You can kill monsters, you can kill robots, but you don't kill people on TV show, on kid shows.
I don't know. I think of Final Fantasy VII. You ever play that?
Is that a kids thing though?
Well, I mean, it was on the PlayStation.
It started out that way.
Yeah.
It was nice and fun, and it was the most tragic thing of. And I'm 20 plus years old at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I go, wait a minute, what just happened? Is she dead? Are we gonna bring her back? And the answer was like, no, Paul. That's what happens when you're impaled with a sword, and you're like.
That gasp.
I'm so sorry. I'm coming hot today, guys. I don't know why. Like
I love it. Bring it.
Arrow breaks.
It's all good, all valid, all enjoyable. Anything else to say about Preludes?
It'll be interesting to see where we go next.
Yeah. We have
what happens to Janeway.
I was going to look to see how many episodes we have left in the season here so that we know what is going on. There's a 2-part finale, I know, but we have 20 episodes total. So we have
4 more episodes.
Yeah, so in 2 weeks we'll be back on the 15th to discuss episodes 17 and 18, and then I have to TBD if I will have internet access on the 29th for us to discuss the finale. I will be on an island in Canada. So we'll figure that out and let y'all know.
I mean,
or it can be a Clyde Paul finale extravaganza.
I don't know. We can go without our captain.
We can't do the finale without you, but like those are 2 words that sound very interesting. Island. I was like, go ahead, Mariah. Canada in late December.
Yes, no
choices. Life. Are you making the right life choices? Are you sure?
There's a hot springs resort though on said island, so I think I'm making the correct choices.
I'm not mad at you.
Can have
take me with you.
A wood burning stove, some hot mineral water. It's gonna be great.
Hang out with me and Jordan. Me and Jordan can kick it. Take me with you.
Yeah, come on up, Salt Spring Island. We're gonna have a good time. All right. I think that's it for me. Anything else from y'all?
No. Is there anything coming out next year or early? Like when?
I think February is Picard, right?
Yeah, like I'm still, this just like the I think the Indiana Jones 5 trailer just dropped. And watching it like, oh. After 4, you got me again. I guess I'm gonna watch it.
I don't know what 4 you're talking about, but I have heard that there's Phoebe Waller-Bridge is involved in this
In
potential
5.
new one.
Yeah, no, yeah.
I think you mean 4. I don't acknowledge the existence of
Yeah,
this
that's
other
right.
one that you
That's right.
speak of.
It's in some like storage unit, like in the bowels of DC, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, oh well, it looks really good, and I feel the same way about Picard season 3. I watch the trailer, I go like, dag nabbit, you got me again. You get me hoping again. So
I have not seen a Picard trailer.
it's good. Clyde, they're ships.
I know, but you don't understand. We got the screeners last time.
Uh-huh.
And I watched those first 3 episodes. And Mariah, I tell you, like I was bouncing around talking about how great it was and how amazing. Like I was just like, this is like they did it. And then by episode 5, I was like, I'm not sure what's going on here.
No,
So I'm coming in this time a little bit more measured, less excitable, and more of a wait and see. Let's see how this goes. Because I was really excited
I'm going in warp 9.997. And I'm going, and if I hit a supernova, so be it. So be it.
Well, TBD, but we shall finish out Prodigy and then we'll have a little bit of a break before we dive into Picard. But I think that is it for us this week. We will be back on December 15th, talking about the next 2 episodes of Prodigy. You can find links to subscribe to the audio version of this. If you're listening to the audio version and you want to check out the YouTube video, you can also find links to that all at StarTrekPod.co. You can also find links to our Patreon. Clyde, where else can people find us on the internet on the platform that still exists? We didn't know it was going to for a few weeks, but Twitter's still around.
You can find us at Star Trek
for now.
At Star Trek Pod on Twitter. And yeah, at StarTrek.co. I highly recommend checking out our Patreon for $2. You can hang out with us in the Slack.
2 strips.
It's fun.
2 strips
Two Latinum pieces. Thanks, Karen, for helping us with social media. Appreciate you so much.
Karen?
We know some people have gone over to like Hive, and what's the other one people are going to? Mastodon. I'm waiting to just see what kind of prevails as the place people go, because as of now, like Hive broke yesterday and it's going to be down for 5 days or something. So, TBD. So
you're going to let everyone Thunderdome it, and then you just go with the winner?
Yeah,
cool,
exactly. Cool. Exactly. All right. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next time. Live long and prosper. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.